Good evening, all. Here we are again, one more time at SPE Brazil section series from SPE Web Talks. We are very glad to have you all here with us today on this 12th section of our series of webinars. And today we're gonna have a very special guest, Dirk Valstar, as well as we're gonna have Bruna Lobo, our moderator today. I will give a quick introduction about her and she'll do about Dirk as well. And first of all, I also like to thank Mariana Dantas for helping us setting up this event, inviting Dirk for giving this very interesting lecture today. Very quick announcements I would like to give for you guys. Next week, we're going to have two important lectures for you. One of them being from the Technical Tuesdays. We're going to have Carlos Bruno from Petrobras talking about a nova visão de fatores humanos, uma diferente abordagem para segurança e excelência profissional. And for our next session of SPE Web Talks on the next Thursday from next week, we're going to have a very interesting topic as well, talking about Bacalhau field development with 4 special guests from Equinor. So please stay tuned on our social media and for you to catch up on this event as well. So please, Rodrigo, if you want to give some message too.
Thank you, Max. And complimenting on the Bacalhau, some people might still know it as Carcará, so it's same asset. Thank you, Max, Mariana, Bruna, Dirk, and everyone. Just a quick message before moving on, just to remind everyone that haven't yet renewed their membership or are not yet members of SPE to do so. If one does it now before the end of the year, it's valid not only for 2020, but also for 2021. And students, either it's graduate, undergraduate, PhD, whatever level, it's for free. If you're looking for a job and are currently unemployed, it's also for free. And if you're recently graduated from university and now a professional, it's also for free. So it's basically the first year of SP membership after that, it's $10, then $20. And for whoever wants to renew and that doesn't fit into any of those situations, it's now $20. That includes the access to the JPT magazine, the Journal of Petroleum Technology. And for any doubt, please visit our website at www.spbrazil.org. And I know Max will send afterwards the link, as well as SP International. It's very easy to renew, and please don't forget to do it. And we're a society where you live for our members, so it's very important for you guys to be registered so you get to know the latest news, events, and invitations. Thank you, Max, and everyone.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Okay, moving on for our presentation of today, I would like to introduce our moderator, Bruna. I will read a short biography from her. So, Bruna Lobo, she graduated in petroleum engineering at Universidade Federal de Rio de Janeiro in September 2019. In August 2017, she joined Total, and after graduation, she became a rig engineer, working offshore for a drilling campaign in Lava Field, Brazilian pre-salt. Currently, she is working as a junior drilling engineer in the office, preparing the next exploration drilling campaign for Total. So, Bruna, thank you very much for accepting our invitation. I'll leave you to it, and please, it's all yours.
Thank you, Max. Good evening, everybody. And first of all, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you a lot. Thank SPE's Brazil section for the invitation. Thanks, Max and Rueda. And okay, so we are not here to talk about me. So before we begin, I would like to introduce our presenter tonight. That will be Dirk Valstar from Schlumberger. And here it's a little bit about him. He received his master in petroleum engineering from Delft University in the Netherlands in 1989. In the early 90s, he joined Schlumberger as a wireline field engineer. And after 10 years in the field, he has held a variety of technical roles in the company in various parts of the world, and is currently a well integrity domain champion for the Western Hemisphere for Schlumberger, based in Houston. So, Dirk, the floor is yours. YouTube is all yours. And thank you a lot for being here with us tonight. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Bruna, for the introduction, and the SPE section from Brazil for introducing me. If we can show the slides, thank you very much, then we can start the talk. So I want to tell you about the latest ultrasonic technologies for deep water. And what we can do with them, right? And so I'll talk some theory, and then I have two case studies to show you what we can do, but also put it in practice. So what are we going to talk about? We talk about cut and pull. What is it, and why do we want to perform these operations? What do we need in order to have a successful operation? And the role of ultrasonics in the operation. We're looking at two specific conditions, the condition of the casing itself, and then what is behind the casing in the analyst, because we need to know that before we can pull it out. And then we talk about those two case histories, and I end with a summary. And after the summary, there is some place for questions. So if people want questions, I was told they can write them in the chat on the beside the presentation. All right. So why do we want to cut the casing and pull it out? Because in the end, that's what it is: the cut and pull. So you see the various reasons for there. Most obviously, it's probably a sidetrack for various reasons. You might miss the reservoir because the seismic was not very good. You might have lost the BHA in the well, and now rather than fishing it out, you decide to go and go around it. Other option is abandoning wells. There is an increased number of wells which are not producing anymore, and in order to continue to keep the environment in good shape, we want to get rid of those, either because operators want to, or these are the regulations which are put in place by each country. Maybe related to sidetracking the well, specifically when you look at offshore, especially when you have jackups or jackets, there's a limited number of slots on these platforms, or even in the template on the seafloor. So you cannot just, like on land, you move over 100 feet, 50 meters and drill another well. You actually have to use these existing facilities on offshore. And then I put in other there as well. You might have your own reasons for cutting a casing out and then pulling it out. For example, you want to access a reservoir which is higher up, which you did not produce before, but you have now two casings sitting there. So it's probably a much better idea that to get one out and then only perforate one casing. So, and you might have your own reasons to perform this operation. So what do we need for this? The first thing is we need to be sure that the casing is strong enough. Okay, if we want to cut it and pull it out, you want to pull it out in one piece. You don't want to pull it out in pieces. If you find out that there is weak in certain areas, you want to avoid breaking it there. The next thing you want to know, can I pull it out? Yes, if you can cut it, but is that casing held in place by something? Is there cement behind it? Is there formation which has creep on it, so it's now holding it in place? You might have some barite settlings because of the mud has been sitting there for years and now it has settled towards the low side, and makes a big difference if you have barite settlement or you have your cement sitting in the analyst. It also is important if there is no solids, what do we have? Is it a liquid or is it a gas? If you have some trapped gas in there, you might want to get rid of that gas first, because if you cut it there or other reasons and suddenly there is a big release of gas in your wellbore, you might have it might have some catastrophic consequences for people working on the rig floor or even on the entire rig which is present at that place. So it's important to know. Now you can see on the section on top right, I've got here a perfect solution for this situation. Okay, this is the pulse echo, our ultrasonic measurement, which has a rotating sub. This is what you see here. This is your transducer. It sits at the bottom of a logging tool which rotates, and every 10 degrees it fires a pulse. So we have a whole number of signals coming back to us which can help us identify what we see, what we have downhole. So we do get information on the casing, the inside of the casing. Is it clean? Is it smooth? We can confirm the transit, or convert the transit time to an internal radius, so we have an idea if my casing is perfectly round, or maybe it's oval, maybe it's damaged, collapsed, etc. We look at the resonance frequency of the return signal. That tells us what is the thickness. So if there is either corrosion on the inside or on the outside, then this thickness will be reduced, and we know we might have a problem if we pull on it, and it might actually break at that place. And the last thing we look at the decay of that return signal. We see it's kind of decaying fast, or is it decaying slow? If it's decaying a lot slower, that means that there is something behind there with a lower acoustic impedance. Okay, and acoustic impedance can be directly related to what is behind the casing. Is it very solid like cement, or liquid, or maybe a gas? If it's gas, this is hardly decaying. It just keeps on ringing that casing. Right, so we have these measurements. If I put them on a log, we have something like this. We see the inside of the casing is very smooth. My internal radius here is nice and clean. No changes at all. We see these different color maps, tells us something about what are the variations of all these measurements. And there will always be some minor variation, because that's how you get your casing out of the steel mill. So internal radius, then we have these two thickness maps, tells us different joints, different properties, but overall my thickness is still in great shape. And then on the right, you see the acoustic impedance measurement itself. And we can see here at the bottom, this is very solid. There's a lot of cement down here, and above it, maybe there's some kind of channeled cement in here. I can recognize a few more features like galaxy patterns, because my casing is lying against the formation. There's a lot of information we can get from these images, from these maps. Right, so this is perfect. However, we do have a problem, because our standard pulse echo measurement had the following limits. The thickness, just over 1/2 inch thick. And you know, if you go offshore, these, especially those deep wells, casing will be a lot thicker than 0.6 of an inch. Likewise, your mud weights, varying where you are drilling, you might be okay with these numbers, but often you actually use a much higher number, especially when you look at the oil-based mud number. 11.2 pounds per gallon is actually very, very low, and often you go way above that if you use this oil-based mud in your borehole. Likewise, on your OD 1338, again we go very deep, deep water, a lot of drilling. You start off with casings which are much bigger than 1338. So ideally, we need something where we can actually look out way further than these values in here. Now, we wouldn't be here if there is no solution for that. So there it is. We have some new generation, both hardware and software. And with that, we actually have very expanded our operating range by a lot. So the standard new operating envelope mentions 1 inch, but I think this is very conservative, because we've already logged here. For example, the log we see here on the right, the casing was over 1 inch thick. If you look at the scale, this is 1.1. We are here 1.15 inch thick. And we actually have areas which are well over 1.2 inch thick, and we still can get a very good measurement on here. So a lot of these measurements you see here, they are guidelines. It's not black and white saying 19 pounds per gallon works, but 19.1 does not work. Okay, it is a range. Likewise, your 20 inch casing. This is what we can do with confidence. If you put in a faster fluid like a brine, the signal travels faster, so you probably can look at signals coming out from 22, 24 inches, which we have done. We've logged 22 inches already without any problem so far. So this new combination of hardware and software is available for our pulse echo, which we just talked about, but also for the advanced measurement, which is the flexural attenuation. And as a bonus on that, we also can log faster. So all together, this has been a very welcome addition to our portfolio in terms of ultrasonic logging. So, having said that, let's go to our first case history. Okay, so here we are in the Gulf of Mexico. The operator here, you see the well sketch, part of it on the right-hand side. The inner casing string is 12.25 inch in OD, and it was run down to more than 20,000 feet deep. It was temporarily abandoned with a bridge plug and cement because the rig was moved to another place, and they came back after a year to continue the well, to drill the next section and complete it. So they had to drill out the bridge plug and the cement, and while they were doing that, they already noticed some abnormalities. So after it was pulled out, they did a pressure test, and they noticed the well could not hold pressure. So in order to find out where was the leak, where was any problems, decision was made to run this advanced or the updated technology, the power echo, in the well and see what that could tell us. So as a reference, your casing was 1.15 inch thick, and the fluid on the inside was a 13.2 pounds per gallon synthetic oil-based mud. So when we logged it, basically we saw the results we're getting here. If we look at some of the tracks, in here we see processing flags, which are normal at the casing collars, but here there is definitely something ongoing. We're missing data, not only on the internal radius, but on the thickness as well. And if there is no good thickness, you can not get a good acoustic impedance. If you look at the entire tele, you can actually see that the distance from the two collars suddenly has increased by 5 feet, and that is exactly the gap we have between over this section. So the operator knew that was the problem, and we need to get that out of the hole in order to proceed with the well recovery. So they recovered it in 2 sections. They didn't want to pull it out in one go, so they first made a cut inside the liner here. They pulled it out, and then the next thing was we pull out the next section and get that back to surface. So now we have a well which we can work further. I think there's some pictures on there after they got it out. You actually can see it's on one side it's fairly smooth. The casing broke, but when I looked at the log itself in detail, the initial log, while we logged it, showed a very smooth cut. There was no damage. So what I think happened is that after they cut that top section, the casing fell down, and that's why they caused this damage. Because if I look at this, there is no way our logging tool can pass through this. So this must have occurred after the log was made, likely after the first cut. So now we have this out of the hole. What's next? Well, the idea was to sidetrack the well. We need to go deeper. We need to go and pull out an extra 2,000 feet of that casing in order to get below the previous casing shoe and start that sidetrack. Now, where to cut? I guess that's obvious, below the casing shoe, but the biggest problem is what is behind the casing. We don't really know. We can look at the log and have a better idea, and we see it's fairly free all the way up here, and then we got more solids, but we don't really know what are they. Okay, is this cement? Is this barite sack, which is quite possible? And the operator decided, okay, let's just cut it straight at our bottom depth, and then just cut it here and pull it out. So they cut it, but it was unsuccessful. Part of the reasons is that the pulse echo measurement, the acoustic impedance, doesn't give you enough information to distinguish between cement and barite, etc. So they actually made a second cut above it. They pulled that out without a problem, and then with some extra work, they got the bottom section out as well. So this allowed them to put the well to continue with the sidetrack of this well. One notion is that the flexural attenuation is a very useful measurement when you come in complicated sections where you need to distinguish between cement, barite, maybe there is formation creep, and these all they come in together and will tell you what you have down there. So this was my first case. The second case is from the North Sea. Left, you see the depth. This is not in feet, but it's in meters. And the target depth is here labeled in red. So in the area of 1,500 meters, that's where they planned to cut or wanted to get the well, the casing out. So what casings do we have inside the wellbore? We have a 20-inch. Then there is a 13-3/8 with the shoe here, and on the inside there is a 958 casing shoe, which needed to be recovered to the zone in red. And the last track we see here is the deviation profile. It's roughly around 20 degrees, 25 degrees here in the deviated section. So this well, we did not run the pulse echo. We did run the advanced measurement, the isolation scanner, or power echo as it's called. So what we do when we run the isolation scanner, we basically replace this rotating sub. This is what makes that pulse echo measurement, okay? So it basically sends out a signal to the casing and it listens to it, that's all. And we get our thickness measurement, we get the acoustic impedance, that all comes down from this little 1-inch surface. So for the isolation scanner, we change out this sub and put something else in place. We put something longer there, right? We have the same threads in here. On the left-hand side here, you see that's the same measurement, which is from that pulse echo measurement. So this is on the left here, but on the right, you see an extra transducer and transmitter actually, and then we have two receivers there above it. So what happens? The transmitter sends out a pulse. It's flexing the casing. It's kind of almost like a shear wave. If there's any mechanical engineers, they say, no, this is not shear. It's a flexural wave. They are different. But it's kind of movement in the same direction. The pulse is then received both at the near and the far receiver. So if we go to the plot at the bottom here, we see, of course, the near has a bigger amplitude, comes in earlier than the far, which has a smaller amplitude, right? And we look at that ratio, the near over the far. We can make some calculations, and now we have something which is we call the flexural attenuation. And that is a much more sensitive measurement in terms of what is there in the analyst. Now, we do get an extra measurement with that, because not all the energy which hits when that signal hits the casing, part of it actually goes through, then bounces back from the formation, what's behind it, or maybe the outer casing, and then it comes back at a later time. So if we go back to the bottom plot, we can see actually, hey, I got some pulses coming in a later time. And that tells us something, what is there behind the casing. We can look at things like the time it takes. It takes much longer, or is it short? That tells us what is the distance of it. All right, I'll come back on that third interface measurement in a minute. We go back to our case. So we run this tool, and these are where we're getting our results. So if we look, the CBL shows very low amplitudes. It starts getting higher. It's a gradual increase in radius until we get really to this bottom, and then very close to the previous shoe, it's very high. Same thing with the acoustic impedance, right? We see it's very low. There is some variations. If you look at the acoustic impedance in green, it's really low. It's interpreted as a liquid. It's in the liquid range. We see there is maybe a small drop here, not much, and then it's pretty stable until we go at the top. These are actually values which are below the normal water values. Now, this new measurement, that fractional attenuation, is showed here, right? So we have numbers. We can see a very clear interface between the dark blue fluid, then there is a lighter blue. We see a gradual change in colors until we end up in this reddish area. It becomes a bit more active in the area, and then definitely when we get to the solids, the cement here at the bottom, there is even more activity. So that's great. Now we already can see much more information. We also have that third echo interface, which I put next to it. But before I talk about that, I want to come back to the measurement itself. Remember, I talked about these pulses which came back later in time. Now, that sub is also spinning. So I actually have 36 measurements. You see here those 36 measurements side by side, and they're here. Now, if I take those 36 measurements and I take typically the far transducer and I translate them in whites and blacks, then I get something like this. So I see my first reflection of the inner casing, and here I have a second one from the outer casing. So I can see something. I can actually see here as a comparison, this is a very poorly centered casing inside the outer casing. It's almost touching here, and we got a very large distance in this area. In order for us to display the data in a continuous depth scale, we take like a cross section, north, south, west, east, and put that on the log. So that's what you see on the right. We have those two north, south, and east, west next to each other. We see our casing reflection here in the center, and then there are some other formation reflections coming back. So we can actually see we got a pinch point in here, likewise here on the other side. So this is a place where my formation has just grabbed onto the casing, and I likely have a problem. I cannot do any cementation below here and trying to circulate this back to surface. Actually, my SLG, my solid liquid gas map shows me I have solids in here. This might also be a problem. It's not touching yet, but it's already very narrow annulus in this area. So it's a good indication, what do I have? So knowing what we're looking at, we can go back to our previous case. No, before we do that, something interesting we can do. We can look at where are my reflections and then correspond that. So if I see that here, and if I know the outer casing and the inner casing, I can calculate an average time. I know the distance, so now I can calculate the velocity. So the software automatically calculated 1200 meters per second. I can do it manually, which I did in this case, and I got very close number. This is very clear data. So 1200 meters per second, this is typically something you get when you have oil-based mud in your annulus. So knowing the velocity, what's in the annulus, is very useful in determining what kind of liquid is there or anything else which might be in there. And that property we're going to use for our case history. So we are here. I have this north-south display. I only have one displayed here. You already can see this is, hey, this distance here is a lot larger, is kind of smaller than when I here. Now I need to look here. This light blue section, you can see the distance here is smaller than in here. So likely, if I have the same distance in the annulus, this is a slower fluid. It takes longer. So we did calculate velocity in various sections. We can see a very slow fluid at the top. This section is faster. And then again, we're getting to a slower fluid. So knowing what we have here, we can start making an interpretation of this. And it becomes kind of clear. So the dark blue oil-based mud typically has values which are below water, between the water and the gas range. So that might be an interpreted red image near the top here. The faster fluid is a spacer or a water-based fluid. And then when drop again, this is typically what you get when you have barite sag. Right? Barite sag can be a very slow material, but still have a higher acoustic impedance. Sometimes it can be confused with light cement, but knowing that you have a barite compared to cement is a big difference. Although it's kind of resistant, you should be able to pull out most of your casing without a problem if you just have barite sag in there. And when we get to the bottom section here, there is just too much dispersion in the analyst that we don't get a good signal back, a good third interface echo in there. So we know we're going to have a problem. It's going to be very difficult to pull this out. We probably need to wash over and drill out the cement on the outside if you get to this section. Or maybe you want to try and pull out one joint at a time. We've done this. Now, the next thing we can do, we can actually use these flexural attenuation measurement and calculate kind of an overpull flag. Every meter or every feet we go deeper, there is an increase in overpull. So we can integrate those values and then make an educated decision. Where do we want to cut? And when do we start having too much overpull that it doesn't go? So it actually helps us to do that and calculate making cuts. So we made a cut here, no problems to pull it out. The next cut was made here at the bottom of that barite section, and they all could pull it out. I mean, this is roughly around 500 meters or 1,500 feet of casing with barite behind there. They pulled out with a severe amount of overpull, but they got it out without any problems. Some pictures on what we got out. This is the barite you got here on the side. The sag, you can just wipe it off with your hand. It's there, it's very sticky, but in the end, it'll just slide out, not too difficult. And the bottom section was the cement, which was there. It doesn't seem too bad of a cement. Looking at my acoustic impedance, it is probably a fairly light cement, but it is definitely present on the log here. So knowing this information beforehand allows them to make a plan and then do your operations rather than going blindly in there. So with that, I come to the conclusion of my talk. We are, if we look at cut and pull operations, they will be with us for, I don't want to say forever, but a very long time. And likely we're going to have more and more as more wells need to be abandoned. We don't have to be blind going into these operations. We can find out if my casing is in a good condition. In order to do that, a pulse echo measurement is good enough. Our ultrasonic is good. If it comes down to your annulus, it can be very complex. You don't know what you're in there. There might be spacer in there. There might be solids which have settled onto something. You might have formation creep holding that casing in place. So the more measurement, the better. Run a CBL, it's useful. Pulse echo and that flexural attenuation, everything, all the information helps to make your best plan and get the smoothest operation if you want to cut your casing out, if you cut and pull your casing. So with that, thank you for your attention, and I'm available for answering any questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Dirk, really, for your presentation. And I think that we can begin the questions. I think that we just received a question from Rafael Glandi, saying that your presentation is very interesting, but he's asking if you had the time to compare the technology, the Schlumberger technology, with Halliburton and Baker, that also were developed well integration for ultrawater.
Okay. Yes. So it's always difficult to share somebody else's work because you don't know the story behind it, and so that's why I go on our jobs we've done. Now, the pulse echo measurement is a standard measurement available in the industry. So Weatherford has their tool, and Halliburton also has their cost tool, as you mentioned. Baker, I know they don't have that technology themselves, although I've heard in some parts of the world they are actually using a tool from somebody else, but I don't know where they do that and where not. When it comes down to the flexural and the third interface echo, there is nobody else who has a measurement like this. You mentioned the Intex tool, which uses some kind of a flexural measurement, but it has a very reduced, what do you call it, a radial. I think they only have 6 sectors, maybe 8, and they don't have a third interface echo. So they might have part of this, but not so much the third interface echo.
Okay, so following for the next question from Benjamin Plavnik. He's asking if can the tool detect any damage or failure in casing connections due to the oil and gas production along the time?
So if you want to look at failures over a connection, that's always a difficult measurement. If you, for example, you have a leak over the thread, it will not be seen by any ultrasonic tool, caliper. It's very difficult. You cannot see it. You have to use the fact that you have fluid movement on there and capitalize on that defect. It might be a spinner, which might see a fluid leak off, a temperature effect, maybe it might generate some noise. So you have to utilize those properties. The ultrasonic itself, for small, very small leaks, especially if they are behind a thread, cannot be seen with ultrasonic.
Okay, and I think that we don't have any more questions in the YouTube, so I'll make my own because I wanted to. And
Sure.
I think that it's more curiosity, actually. I don't know if it's some point of your career you have faced some problem related to well integrity, and you were on the rig or something, and then you had to stop and say, "Oh my God, this is challenging," and something that you never forgot. And what did you do to solve the problem?
Okay, you put me on the spot there. My rig days, they've been more than 20 years ago. So I do have some things where we just, something is unexpected and you have to make it work. And it basically comes down to being innovative. Sometimes you want to think outside the box and do that. There's not a reason where I can say this is I used to solve this while doing on the rig. However, if we talk about this measurement, one thing we used not too long ago was an operator. They wanted to pull out their tubing, or their casing, but they wanted to circulate first, make some squeeze holes, and then they could circulate it out. So they've done like 2-3 squeeze jobs, and they could not establish circulation. The CBL they run, it says, okay, it's free pipe there. So they asked us, can you come along with these ultrasonic? And so we run the isolation scanner, and it showed, yep, there is free pipe. There's not a problem. But then we looked at, rather than saying, well, the casing is free, we just go and look further back into that. So we ran, and I looked at this third interface echo, right? And I looked at this continuous plot here, and I saw on this, what we call this slider plot, I saw these were kind of, where's my mouse? There we go. Right? I saw on the places where they perforated the squeeze guns, it was always touching each other. So I had to find a place where it was not touching at all. So, and that's what we relate to the operator. Says, why don't you go up at this depth? There, the casings are not touching each other, and then they they shot some holes and they had circulation in one go. So there is always, not always, but often you have to just dig a little bit deeper in order there. And that's where one thing often I say to my engineers, to my customers as well. I mean, you should tell us what is your problem rather than say, come run this service for me. If you tell us the problem, then we can work out something better. Okay, how can we get you the best answer?
Okay. Thank you. So, next question from Mariana Dantas. What are the other applications for TI on the P&A operations in deepwater wells?
So the other third interface we've used, for example, if you want to look for certain things which you might have in the analyst. Here in the US land, we have a lot of operations where they monitor with downhole gauges, and they got all these fibers on the outside. They can be used in order to locate anything in between those things. You might see some things. Now, you might look at very few wiggles in there. So if you're looking for a certain thing, if you have a baseline and then you come back later and see something has changed, then you know, hey, I saw it first and now it's gone. So something must have happened. What I wanted to do. If you want to pull out, for example, something you have in the analyst here. If you have, for example, a dual completion, you want to be sure if for example, you break it out, it will get a reflection from something here in the analyst there. So it's very good for detecting places in the analyst. Or even if you have a gap here, you have a damaged casing. If you suddenly see that there is nothing, that might be a good indication that you have burst your outer casing or it has been damaged. If it's been, I know a case where they did a well collided, they drilled a well into another well. So by logging on the inside, we can actually see where is the previous casing damaged from there. So it's a very useful measurement, and these are just a few things. It's sometimes thinking, what can I do in order to visualize what I want to know?
Okay, thank you. So, going for the next question from Mariana as well. When leak appear on thread casing connection, is necessary to cut it and to do casing patch operation, right? What is the reason to use a mechanical cut instead of mechanical?
Okay, so the first question, if you have a leak over the casing thread, you might have two options. You might want to run an internal patch and somehow prevent that leak, although that will be a reduction in your inside diameter. So you might not be able to get certain size tools through the casing. But if you want to cut it out, there are several options. You might have an explosive cutter, a chemical cutter, or even a mechanical cutter you run on drill pipe, or maybe even on wireline. So these are all different options you have. Chemical cutters work very good, but they need to have fairly small distance between the cutting head and the casing. Likewise, the explosive cutter. And I think there are limits on that. If you have a very large casing size, I think you will be limited to a mechanical cutter. So one cutter from the other, sometimes people prefer one another. Chemical cutters can be very nasty in terms of chemical. There's a lot of safety features involved, likewise with explosive cutters. But on the other side, running a tool on wireline is often a lot faster than tripping down on drill pipe several thousand meters. So I think it's more a personal or a procedural preference you might have for one for the other.
Okay, so just correcting myself, because before I said that it was Mariana's question, and it's from Gutenberg Benzer. Thank you, Gutenberg, for the question.
Okay.
And I think that we have another one from Rafael Huber. Is there any technology that can do this cement evaluation, casing integrity, that runs through tubing?
So do you mean we run the tool through tubing and then evaluate the casing below it, or do we run inside tubing and then want to evaluate the cement outside the casing at that depth?
I don't know. I think that I'll be waiting for half.
Okay. All right, so I'll answer both. If it comes down to evaluating the casing below tubing, most pulse echo measurements, or in these are about 3.5 inch in diameter. So your tubing needs to be large enough to go underneath.
Okay.
For that. Otherwise, you are left with a slim hole sonic, and that's pretty much the only you have. Okay, so I see here it is they want to know if there is an option to evaluate cement behind the case inside the tubing. Okay, interesting question. We are working on a measurement by combining two different tools where we're looking at evaluating the position of the tubing inside the casing itself, and combine that with a low frequency sonic signal, a directional signal, which then can give you information on what's behind the casing. That also, if we have done some field tests, it looks promising. I can give you some information after that. It's a very long subject, and it works. It has promising result in that situation. One important thing is that we need to have a liquid in between the tubing and the casing. So if you want to say, I have a 7-inch casing, then there is cement, and then I have a 958 casing, then it's going to be very difficult. But if there is liquid between your 7-inch and the 958, we might have a good chance that we can help you on that.
Okay, so I'm not sure, but I think that for the moment we don't have any more questions. If somebody wants to do the last questions, please feel free. We're going to wait a little bit, maybe. In the meantime, I think I wanted to thank Dirk for the presentation. Really, it was really good. So Dirk, I think if you want to say the last words, your last considerations, feel free.
Okay, yeah, thank you for paying your attention and attending my webcast. I hope you found it very informative, and I will always be asked for any other follow-up on that. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I was on mute. All right, guys. So yeah, thank you very much. That was a brilliant talk here we had today. Another one, our continuous success we are having with these webinars. Bruna, on behalf of the SPE Brazil section, thank you very much for moderating this event, as well as for Dirk accepting the invitation to be here with us today. Certainly is a huge honor for all of us to have you both here. Mariana, would you like to say some words as well?
I just would like to thank Dirk for accepting our invitation. It's very important for us to have you sharing a little bit of your knowledge here, and thank you all for coordinating this event.
Yeah, great, guys. Just before we finish, let me just try to share a few things with you as well. Let me see if I can do this. Yeah, I was going to share our next. Let me try to do this here. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, so are you seeing the Bacalhau Field Development, our next session of the SPE Web Talks? Or no?
Yes, we are seeing.
All right. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I think it's my first time sharing the screen on the streamer. So, okay, guys, as I said in the beginning, this will be our next session for the SPE Web Talks. We're going to have, 4 panelists talking about the Bacalhau Field Development. We're going to have Karim Glitz, our principal reservoir engineer from Equinor, Elisa Nogueira, the leading production engineer, Kalwan Vidmod Junkie, that's a pretty hard name to say, so forget it. Sorry if I'm pronouncing incorrect. Principal geologist, as well as Lars Tidland Hansen as well. Sorry if I didn't pronounce it not right. So that's the one. And also for the next Technical Tuesday, we'll have the presence of Carlos Bruna, a colleague from Petrobras, talking about nova visão de fatores humanos, uma diferente abordagem para segurança e excelência profissional. So yeah, just these two messages I'd like to give you here. Please stay tuned on our social media pages. We'll be posting these events later on, and please stay tuned. Okay, guys.
And thanks everybody for the questions.
Yeah, of course.
All right, thank you. Have a good evening.
Good evening, all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Cheers.